Hello everybody, hope you're doing alright. One Piece chapter 933 is here, and as predicted by yours truly, and by anybody with half a brain, it looks like Kaido has begun to start taking things a little bit more seriously now. I think maybe he just needed a hand in the beginning to get going, huh? That's right, the tables are beginning to turn, and Yonko Kaido's comeback officially begins in this chapter. We've all heard about the Hour of Legends, well now it's time for the Hour of the Wrath of the Blue Dragon, my friends. So, let's get to it.
Lola's wish of getting married finally came true in this week's cover story because she's marrying Gotti. And so this is the official unification of Capone's crew, the Fire Tank Pirates, and Lola's crew, the Rolling Pirates. And I think visually this is probably the best page out of this entire cover story because you have all the characters there. What's funny though is that before this, Baby Pez couldn't even walk, and here we have him balancing himself on one leg on top of another person. So this pretty much confirms that Baby Pez is the new user of the Balance No Mi. They're all one big happy family, one big combined crew, and I can't wait to not spend more time on them anymore. It's been a long time since we've been in the Flower Capital in the manga, which is where this chapter starts, and I think this is Oda's reminder to the reader that, hey, you know, there's still people that are oppressed, that are not near where the action is, so just a reminder, there are still people here that need to be free, and people that yearn to see Kaido fall. So this pretty much confirms the notion that at some point you have to bring the action back to the mainland over so that the citizens can witness Kaido's defeat. So these people are just being set up to witness the fall of their tyrant. So that makes it so that people there have no choice but to cheer for and love Luffy by the end of the arc. It happens all the time. Now, because of what I just said, and because we do get to see an Oden float, a giant Oden balloon there for the celebration, I cannot imagine that balloon not playing a role in the fight. I feel like this is Oda setting up Luffy's awakening because the balloons for parades used to be made out of rubber. Plus, sometimes Luffy gets inspiration for his attacks from things that he sees in his environment. And so if he were to draw inspiration from this representation of Oden in the Flower Capital, I think that would serve to give his attack a lot of historic relevance and substance, because in a way it would be kind of like saying that Oden kind of helped Luffy free Wano. So if Luffy ends up near that balloon and he doesn't use it to either like manipulate or control the rubber of the balloon, to use that Oden figure for an attack, to blast Kaido, to hit Kaido with it, I would be very surprised. I think that Oden balloon is going to be pivotal in either Gear 5th or Luffy's awakening. I also like how Oda showed that the people in Wano are very appreciative of the fact that there's currently no pollution. Like the water is clean, the air is clean, because the people responsible for all that messed up stuff are currently in Onigashima. So they're getting their yearly peaceful break from everything.
So I think what's going to happen to the citizens of Wano is this. Imagine you're in school and you have a teacher that you hate, right? You just can't stand them because they're awful, right? And then one day you show up to class and you find out that the teacher is not there, you know, that they're taking the day off, or maybe they weren't feeling well, something like that. And you're like, oh wow, we get to enjoy this one day without the teacher, right? This one day of freedom. And then the next day you show up, you actually hear that the teacher has been fired because they got caught wrestling with a monkey in the parking lot. Now imagine the teacher's name is Kaido and your name is Citizens of Wano. That's what's going to happen here.
Now in the first page of the chapter, you see this masked figure dancing with fire. That's what the Japanese call Namahage. Namahage are basically these spirits that show up in New Year's Eve or in other types of festivals. And so Japanese parents use them to scare children into behaving during the year. That's why you see a little kid there in the audience. So basically, children are told that if they are lazy or naughty, they're going to be taken away by Namahage. And if the Namahage can't find any lazy children, they just kind of bless the family and leave.
So it's very fitting that the narrator is talking about how the smiles of the people are covering up the fears and pressures that lurk behind them as we see the figure of the Namahage.
We see that Minatomo is there as well, prepping up some drinks. I think it'd be kind of cool if you could share a drink with Frankie once this is all said and done.
We then go inside of the dome where X-Drake and Zoro are discovering Queen's new invention. And is it just me? I was kind of confused. I don't know if the silhouettes that we see in the back, I don't know if those are numbers or if those are actually people that are transforming into Ice Oni. I mean, I'm assuming they're numbers because of how tall they are, and also because Apu called in for reinforcements a couple of chapters ago. But yeah, sometimes like Oda's silhouettes, they do more harm than good. There's actually 4 of them at one point. In the panel where you see like one guy like biting another guy, like in that panel you actually see 3 silhouettes in the middle and then another one to the side, like on your right. Actually, I'm gonna take back my initial assumption and say that I don't think that those silhouettes are numbers anymore, because if you read the way that the creatures are yelling, they just have the generic so if they were numbers, they would probably be laughing or shouting, you know, some kind of a thing related to their number. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're just like frozen Oni men.
Another interesting thing here is that the type of bullets that Queen has used, the 2 types that we've seen him use thus far, have a monster theme to them. So the first one was mummy bullets. Those are the bullets that he used back in Udon. And then here in this chapter, he's using Ice Oni or Ice Ogre bullets. And Chopper already came up with the antidote for the mummy bullets, but I couldn't help thinking that these ice bullets that we see in this chapter would be pretty much useless against somebody like Sanji, who uses fire to fight. Because if Sanji were to get hit by them, he could just melt and defrost the ice. No big deal. Plus, I think he could kick other people to shatter the ice or to melt the ice from their bodies as well, the same way he was able to break through Peros Peros Candy and Whole Cake Island. This chapter, we get a map of the floor levels inside of Onigashima, and if Oda's giving us this, then this means that he's going to be using the map repeatedly to show us where each of the characters are, like how far they're advancing and who they're fighting. And so based off of where Luffy is right now, you can kind of guess, get an approximation about how long it's going to take him to get to the top. So right now, it looks like it's going to take a while. He's like 5 floors down, so unless he gets like a boost or he starts using Gear 4th to just fly up or something like that, we're going to be here a while. And so this is a perfect example, a perfect illustration of something that you can use to explain to your friends why it is that One Piece is almost 1,000 chapters long.
Queen actually orders people to close the doors so that the Pirate Alliance can advance and get to the top. But given how we see in this chapter that people can essentially just break through the floor, I'm not really sure that closing the doors is going to be of much help. And I've said this before, but another thing that could happen is for the roof to collapse, to fall in on itself, and that way, like, the levels won't matter as much. Sanji pushes Luffy out of the way and clears the path using party table kick course.
Continuing the theme of Kaido's crew being named after card games, the gifter with a gorilla for an arm is named Briscola. Briscola is a European card game. I think it's Italian in origin. It's a card game that has a point system to it. And it's funny because the gorilla starts using like Gatling gun or something like that, where he's like throwing punches just like Luffy, just to charge up his attack. Sanji dodges the attack, and then all of a sudden you hear Samegara Seiken! And this is an attack that Jinbe has used twice in the series. He used it back in Fishman Island when he was quarreling with Luffy, and he used it against Moria back in Marineford. And the thing about this attack is that it's so similar concept-wise. It's just so similar to Rio in the sense that the attack kind of travels through the air, you know, using the water in the air and stuff, and then it hits the opponent and it actually damages the opponent internally because of the water inside of their body, and then the attack just kind of comes out the other side. So it's very, very similar to Rio. Kind of gets me to think like, man, like what is Jinbe going to do with this kind of Fishman karate going forward? Is he going to try and hit Kaido with it? Is he going to try and fight Jack with it? Like whatever the case, Jinbe needs an opponent that is worthy of his fighting skills.
There's a lot of arguing that takes place during this scene, and it almost feels like Zoro should be there to argue with Sanji, but instead it's Luffy and Jinbe. So you got Sanji and Jinbe escorting Luffy to the top. You don't have Zoro there, obviously, because he would just get lost and he doesn't know which direction is up. And I feel like this is Oda introducing us to the new dynamic between the monster trio or the new monster quartet, where like Jinbe and Sanji are kind of similar in that like they're the tacticians in a way, like they plan ahead and execute plans and stuff. Whereas Zoro and Luffy, like they're just, you know, really strong, but you can't really count on them to execute plans properly. So Sanji has to warn Jinbe about the fact that Luffy gets distracted very easily. And in fact, if you look at that panel, as you see Sanji and Jinbe going upward, you see Luffy already throwing a kick.
an elastic kick somewhere off panel. So it seems like he's going to get stuck in that location fighting. And then Jinbe and Sanji are going to look at each other and be like, wait, where's Luffy? Wasn't he right behind us?
We see a cat that has its face covered with a paper and an eye symbol, and it's spying on Yamato, Shinobu, and Momonosuke. And I hate sounding like a broken record, but my theory is that the people that have that symbol, that have their face covered, are all members of the Three-Eyed Tribe. And this chapter just kind of served to further that belief because, well, there's a bunch of reasons for why I think this. The first thing is, like I said, every time we've seen a person with that eye symbol, their face is covered. Like, why is that? What are they hiding? Who's who has a tattoo of that eye on his chest and he's wearing a mask? Why is that? Why is Bao Huang's face covered up? Why is that cat's face covered up? There's other characters too, like really like minor, like, secondary characters that had that symbol. And the same thing, like their face is always covered. So I think it's the same thing with Pudding where like she was using her bangs to cover up that eye. Also, apparently the cat is capable of seeing through the paper because it's watching Yamato run away. But how is that? How can a cat see through a paper? It's like, when was the last time you heard of a cat being trained in observation hockey enough to see through things like that? If you just type three-eyed cats on Google Images, you see a lot of like really interesting designs. According to mythical lore, cats are associated with like having a sixth sense, like being able to perceive things or be aware of things that we can't perceive, like kind of being connected with the spiritual world, stuff like that. Also, Bao Huang seems to be connected with this cat, and we know that Bao Huang has the flying squirrel smiley devil fruit, so it's not like he's using the devil fruit to connect with the cat. There has to be something else going on, and so I think that the people that have that third eye could be connected in some kind of like a spy network or an eyesight network, similar to the way that Nagato used the pain bodies to be able to fight. Also, Who's entire crew has a cat theme to it. We saw his subordinates dressed up as cats, and he also has that big eye tattoo on his chest. So maybe Who's Who is the main guy. Maybe he's the central network to all of these eyes, and maybe he's going to be using that vigilance, or he's going to be using the eyes of his subordinates to get the upper hand in his upcoming fight. I just think that having that interconnectivity, in addition to being able to read the poneglyphs, could be a very cool ability for the Three-Eyed Tribe to have.
Now, King here actually comes up with a very smart idea, which is to order everybody to try and kill Momonosuke, because since he's the rightful heir to the shogunate, if you kill Momonosuke, the samurai will lose their will to fight. And so everybody's going to try and kill Momo now, and you see a shot of Ulti and Who's Who getting the message. And my hope is that at least when it comes to Ulti and page 1, that Usopp and Nami are going to stand in front of them and be like, nope, you two are not going anywhere, we're not going to let you get to Momo. And I think that could happen because Nami sometimes has like this maternal instinct for children. Like we've seen her stand up for them, and she actually likes Momo a lot. And then with Usopp, we actually got a scene recently where he was running away with Chopper, but he decided to come back inside of the skull because he learned that Momo was about to be executed. Nevertheless, Sasaki already has eyes on Momo, and he shoots at him and Shinobu, and boom, it's like Shinobu gets shot with arrows. There's like an old Viking turtle man that shows up out of nowhere wielding an axe, which is never a good sign.
And I like how when Shinobu tells Momonosuke to run, Momonosuke kind of questions that. And he's like, is that what a shogun would do? So he's growing. He's learning to think as a leader. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that out of all the characters in Onigashima, ever since we got to the island, Momonosuke has been the one with the most development. We see Sasaki show up with his squad, and so now it's time to play what prehistoric devil fruit power does Sasaki have?
So the first thing I noticed from Sasaki's squad, or the group of gifters that he's leading, is that if you look at the animals as a whole, you'll notice that they're all herbivores, right? You got a rhinoceros, you got a bunch of beetles, a porcupine. All of these animals eat plants. So that's our first hint in terms of what Sasaki's devil fruit power could be.
Also, the group that he's with is called the Armored Division. So let's think about prehistoric, herbivore, and armored. Like, what kind of dinosaur fits that description, right?
So unless Oda decides to play a joke on us and have Sasaki's devil fruit power not be anything related to the group that he's currently with, I think Sasaki has to be either a Stegosaurus, a Triceratops, or an Ankylosaurus. So let me know, which one do you think he is, which one would you like him to be, or if you came up with your own dinosaur that fits the clues in this chapter, let me know down in the comment section.
Yamato confronting Sasaki creates an opportunity for Momonosuke and Shinobu to see that Yamato is actually trustworthy, and I think that out of the possible matchups that are beginning to take shape, I think the ones that we can have a little bit more confidence on actually happening are Usopp and Nami versus Ulti and Page 1, Yamato versus Sasaki, if nothing else changes, and then Carrot Sulong versus Spero Spero, or Wanda and Carrot Sulong versus Spero Spero. I think those are the matchups that are taking shape, and that we can have a little bit more confidence in saying that those are the ones that are probably going to be the ones for the arc.
We go back to the top of Onigashima and we see that Kawamatsu is back. He got flung through a cliff, but apparently he's now returned to the action. And speaking of Kawamatsu, the anime episode preview for next week essentially shows him using Ryo the same way that Luffy uses it. We get a very well-drawn panel of Kaido on his side, just bleeding out of this cut on his stomach. But as we come to find out, according to him, this is just a superficial wound to him. You got Ashura Doji, who's been a rogue pretty much all his life. He's been the head of a group of bandits, and he was the most dangerous criminal in Kuri. And then you have the Minks, who are a warrior race, and so they start their training as children. And then in the last chapter, we learned that the Scabbards were training so hard that they were getting close to killing each other because of it. And Kaido takes all of that and he's like, you know what? This isn't doing it for me. Like, he even tells them, if you actually had the power to kill me, I would have no problem letting you kill me. But you don't have the power to kill me, so you better buckle up because I'm about to get serious now.
And a lot of what Kaido says in that scene is about him feeling guilty over cheap-shotting Oden because Oden thought that Momonosuke had been taken hostage. And he took advantage of that opportunity, so he kind of feels guilty. So that's why he says, you know, I could have let you guys kill me, but he says, you people are not Oden. We will never see a monster samurai of his like again, which I think just kind of opens up the door for a new samurai to show up and show Kaido that he's wrong. Some people I know want to believe that's Zoro. I think it could also be Luffy. Now, because Oda is spending so much time having Kaido hype up Oden, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a moment where Luffy is fighting Kaido and Kaido says something like, oh wow, you might even surpass the legendary Oden, because Oda loves hyping Luffy up. He loves making you love Luffy, let's be honest. And then Kaido gives us the biggest clue in terms of what's going to happen to him by saying, you guys don't even have the power to open up the old scar. So the moment I read that, I was like, okay, so somebody's gonna open that up again. Now, because of Luffy's fighting style being punch-based, I don't know if he's gonna be the one to open up that scar. I think what he could do, if Oda wanted to go that route, is to have Luffy just focus all of his Ryo, all of his punches on that scar or on that area that is already bleeding. So, you know, the more you hit that, like, the more vulnerable it gets, and ultimately, you know, that thing is going to burst. I don't really subscribe to the idea that Zoro is going to kill Kaido. I think the fact that he killed the dragon in Punk Hazard is enough for Zoro to sort of fill the Ryuma parallel already. But in this chapter and in other chapters, I think the Scabbards have been making a point to say that they want to take Kaido's head. So I feel like that could be considered foreshadowing for somebody else cutting Kaido's head off. If that has to happen in the story, I would want it to be Blackbeard, the one who takes Kaido's head. And maybe that's the way that, you know, Oda brings back, teaches Wolverine Claw. But then also, I believe that Zoro got Enma for a reason. And so if Zoro doesn't get a full out 1v1, then I think it would fit for Zoro to show up there and be the one to reopen Kaido's wound, because he has the same sword that gave him the first wound in the first place. Now here's a bit of caution, a bit of a warning with this prediction, all right? If Zoro manages to wound Kaido manages to give Kaido long-lasting damage. Let's say he opens up the scar with Enma and Kaido is just bleeding, just gushing out of it, right? If Zoro manages to do that to Kaido in this arc, because Mihawk was the one who trained Zoro, we're gonna see some power scaling debates between the Mihawk fanboys and the Yonko fanboys like we've never seen before. You'll be feeling like you're floating between dimensions after you read all that stuff. When I first read that last page, there was a part of me that reacted just like Izo and Kinemon did, like, Yamero Kaido! Yamero! Kika! But then there's another part of me that is like Bucky in Civil War during the airport scene, and I'm looking over at Kaido, and I'm like, you couldn't have done that earlier? Now, I know some translations had Kaido's attack as being like wind slices, right? But the official translation actually doesn't have the word wind. Instead, we have Denjiro saying invisible slashes. So it could very well be a wind attack because the air is invisible, and we've seen that Kaido in dragon form can control air, the wind, and all that stuff. But Denjiro's comment about the slashes being invisible also got me thinking about Sentomaru's haki, his Rio, and how the waves that he pushes forward kind of seem to be invisible as well. So let me know, do you think this is just wind boosted up a notch, or do you think it's actual haki, and that's the thing that overpowered Kiku? I think that's a valid question because, you know, so far, the elemental attacks that Kaido has been using on the Scabbards haven't been really effective. I think this is very clearly the beginning of the slaughter. I don't think that Kiku is going to be the only one of the Scabbards to be losing a limb. If you remember when Jack was torturing the minx, he took Nekomamushi's hand and Inuarashi's foot or leg, whatever. So in order to live up, in order to surpass Jack, in order to surpass his subordinate, Kaido has to do something even greater than that.
Revenge? I'll show you revenge. Your cuts are shallow and weak.
I don't think Kiku is going to die. I think out of the Scabbards, because of this happening to her, I think she's relatively safe. I think that usually when it comes to shonen, you know, sometimes losing a limb is kind of the price that you have to pay to stay alive. That way readers can be like, well, this character survived, but, you know, it cost them an arm or a leg to keep being alive. So, you know, maybe that's the rationale there. I mean, unless you're somebody like Jiraiya who lost an arm and then they also got killed. Now, I'm not going to say that the Kiku that loses an arm in this chapter is actually an ink clone or something like that, but I do think it's important to remember that the Kiku versus Kanjiro fight was off-screened. We don't really know too much about Kiku's abilities. I thought her sword was supposed to be special because it had an added effect, but the sword gets nicked. It gets cut off clean, just like her arm, so apparently it wasn't special enough. I think it's only natural to think about Law in this scenario as well, like how he lost an arm in Dressrosa, but he was fine afterwards because the Tontara showed up and Leo stitched him up, and then Manchuri healed him. So I did kind of wonder, is Kiku losing an arm supposed to be considered foreshadowing for the Straw Hat Grand Fleet showing up, and then that way Leo can come in and reattach Kiku's arm? I mean, Marco's around there as well, and he's a healer too, so you never know. Then again, we do have a lot of characters in One Piece that have lost arms that go on to live perfectly normal lives. Like we have Kid, we have Shanks, we have Perospero, we have Crocodile, we have Nekomamushi. Technically speaking, Frankie's arms aren't even real, right? And I do think it's technically fair that the Scabbards that end up taking the most damage from this fight are the Scabbards that jump through time, the Scabbards that jumped 20 years into the future, because technically those are the Scabbards that have trained the least. And I do think that if this is what Oda is having Kaido do now, right? And you saw the map, you saw how many levels Luffy still has to go to get to the top. So if this is the way things are escalating, I do think we're going to see some deaths. It's only a matter of time before people start dropping. I thought this was a good transitional chapter. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think Sasaki's double fruit power is? Is Kiku's arm a repairable thing or not? Who do you think out of the 9 Scabbards is going to die? There's a movie that Oda loves by Akira Kurosawa called Seven Samurai that kind of served as inspiration for the 9 Red Scabbards. And in the movie, well, let's just say that out of the 7 samurai, not all of them make it to the end of the movie. The hour of the wrath of the Blue Dragon is officially upon us. Thank you for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves. I'll catch you guys later. Let me know what you thought about the chapter down below. And if you would like to, leave me a like. That is always appreciated, as well as subscribing if you haven't done so already. We're on the road to tragedy, the road to chapter 1000. Take care, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.